I wanted to explain a couple things, and again, please hold me to the utmost scrutiny. Like, if you even give a damn about what I say, which I think tends to be part of the validation for me that I must be onto something. Which is, what do you mean? Well, what I mean is that, well, what I'm going to say is going to be pretty wild and out there. And if I can't really believe it or accept it, then I highly doubt other people will. So the reason I put myself out there to look crazy, it's not to look crazy, but it's to lay down groundwork, which I think is a very sad commentary on society, where when you have an individual, for whatever reason, in the, sort of let's find ourselves a spiritual awakening world that we live in, regardless of what your tastes or flavors are or where you are in the world. I really think it's an insult to individuals when they either tell you about something or warn you about something, and then that thing happens, or you may have even had your life saved because of it. And that's a fine line because, as the rules go amongst those I discuss things with, is the future is foreseen, but freedom of action must be given, which means you've got to let fate be fate. Now, based off of personal experiences that people can dispute all the time, I have the evidence, but they just don't have the time to look at it. And when I have presented these things or have actually had incidents happen in front of my friends where I will be capable of basically knowing things I should not know. And I don't mean that in a sinister way. I mean, I don't even know how I know them. Maybe I'll be talking about something I did last week, and I'll mention the name of a certain park. And little do I know that someone in the group that I'm talking to had a friend that went missing in that park. Now, that can be dangerous. Why? Because that girl could call the police and say, hey, I think it's really weird that this guy was talking about that park where we were all looking for my friend. It's not been in the paper yet, and he comes to my house and he starts talking about that place. I think he might be a suspect. Okay, have I had that happen before? Yes. I had that happen before because I'm at the location of many criminal incidents, and yet I'm not the criminal. And I've been the victim of them too. The amount of near deaths I've had in the last 10 years is very bizarre, but what's more bizarre is they've all happened on the same numerical date. I've been poisoned. I'm not really someone who's out there and, dealing drugs or picking up on girls or doing anything that's threatening towards other people. Yet the police are very suspicious because I've had many attempted murders on me. And in fact, one of the times it happened, I was so knowing it was coming that I was prepared for it. And when the guy came, I threw him so off guard that he somehow got a kind of a spiritual awakening out of that, because I know why you're here. I know what you're going to do. And without, I'm not going to elaborate anymore on the guy because he's my friend. But I will tell you that he had just gotten out of prison. He was the boyfriend of another friend's ex-girlfriend, and I was at a barbecue with him. And me and him have a lot in common with stuff that we used to do, like in Los Angeles. He's not from LA, but we were in the same industry. And so I knew that he was capable of doing this, and he came to my house and was being all friendly, and I basically knew this is one of them. This is an agent. Now, what do you mean by an agent? FBI? No, no. When I call agents like that, I usually say it's either the FBI or the CIA or something like that. When I say agent, what I mean is someone who has been manipulated through whatever means, not brainwashing, into a scenario where they have made doing some negative act for seeming. So somehow or another, a chessboard has been set up so that it leads individuals to me. Let's say, for example, I tell a bunch of guys who are home invasion masters that I know a house where there's a bunch of gold and millions of dollars in it. You know what I mean? And maybe I got that rumor from someone else who knows someone else. You see what I'm saying? And little would I know, I'd be a sucker here. I'd be a disinformation agent. That by telling that information to guys that have guns and want to rob people, basically it'll turn out that the people didn't have any money. But I'll find out later on that someone in that house actually had information leading to something else. Now, so what are you saying? You're saying some, master conspiracies going on? Well, yeah, we know that. But what I'm saying is it doesn't seem to be happening in the physical world. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Because everyone I've talked to and interviewed, literally interviewed, after I've had an incident where I've had almost been killed. Keep in mind, my fourth near death, which was in a TV Dot hospital, I was put on quarantine because they didn't know what was wrong with my legs. And they said I was poisoned. 6 months earlier, I knew I had been poisoned. I suspected I knew who it was. I went to the hospital, and my story was so far fetched. They just drugged me. It was crazy. It was really messed up, and they put me in a 5150. I was never charged because I wasn't crazy, but they didn't believe my. They said my story, what I was saying, was so ridiculous, and they put me on a 5150 hold. And I told them when I snapped out of the drugs they gave me, what had happened, and they thought it was so far fetched that they couldn't let me go. Once I got released, 2, 3 years after that, I had been looking into the situation because it was something that really disturbed me. It was frightening. You don't go into a hospital, tell people I think I've been poisoned. I think this guy did something to me or something like that. It's like I'm not usually a tattletale like that. But I was hallucinating severely, and it wasn't acid. It was like some kind of weird, I don't know how to describe it. But I even had a run-in with the police department that night in the middle of the evening. And things like that. Now, after the fact, they didn't look into that. Of course not. I'm just crazy. I went and got all the evidence, and everything that I had said, there were witnesses to it, there was camera footage to it, and they said none of what I said was true. Well, maybe not my opinion, but clearly you could see by the evidence something very suspicious was going on here. He's not lying to you when he says he was frightened, something was going on. You can dismiss it and say he exaggerated, or it wasn't that big of a deal, but they thought I was in there crazy, making up the story. I ran into the guy that I suspected had something to do with this because of just the nature of which he was introduced to me, and he was there the night this happened. And when I ran into him, it was not through anyone I knew. It was through a new friend I had met in between that time, a year or 2 years later. And I basically shared with my friend, that guy's cool. I don't not talk to him, but something happened to me that I thought was related to that guy. And the friend I was talking to was astonished because that guy had been hanging out with his friends, and both of his friends came down with the same kind of thing and scenario and explanations that I had. And apparently I was the first one. So I'm crazy for what I said. But since that time, that same individual has been present or associated with other people who got into scenarios where the same thing happened, where they took them into they locked them up for good. Or not for good, but they basically said he was crazy. He set up a scenario where he said a guy was building bombs in his hotel room. It's very weird, and the guy is a very weird guy. So this guy had his other friends who were all locals, and some of them were like Hells Angels guys. Investigate who is this guy, because my new friend Don has said he actually had the same incident as this other guy Mike, and I forgot what the other guy's name was. And they're married with kids. I wasn't married with kids. And the answer they gave us was astonishing. In fact, I'm so intimidated I don't want to tell you what his last name was. But it's a very popular last name. And it doesn't really make any sense. It's someone that everyone would know, involving with things that are like, Illuminati type things, put it that way. And I didn't believe it, and I looked into it, and sure enough, I knew he was visiting his mother in Carmel down here, although he lived in Santa Cruz. And the name of the winery is, in fact, the last name of one of the big names that we talk about in the United States as one of these mega millionaire, like the DuPonts and people like that. And this guy was actually related to them. Just a weird coincidence. But when I confronted him about it, and I wasn't a confrontation, I just told him, I know who you are. Your last name is so-and-so. What are you, part of the Illuminati? The reaction floored us. He panicked, and he's never panicked. He never cares. He almost had this idea of like, what are you going to do? Nothing can ever touch me. And he took off, and no one's ever seen him since. And I was joking. I had a smile on my face. I was just playing around. I was just going to be like, what a coincidence. That's the last name, huh? Oh, what are you, part of the, secret society, da-da-da. And he got so fucking scared, he took off. And since that time, I kid you not, I've had my phones all tapped. That's backed up by AT&T. I've had military people come to me. I've had the FBI here. Not for that specific issue. The other times it was that specific issue. But within the matters of how I'm getting harassed. And it got worse and worse, and it still is really bad. I'm hung up in my house. And when my mom dying, I don't know how to explain that, but there was something very wrong with my mom dying, with dementia, because you're supposed to have a deterioration of the brain. So when your mom's knocking on your door in the middle of the night, you think, oh, she's just psycho. She'll die soon, right? But she's saying things to me that no one else would know. So I don't understand what was she in another time frame? And I don't mean she said a name. I mean, she was giving me details and stuff like that. It's like she was baiting me. It's like she was possessed. I know that sounds crazy, but why don't you go talk to other people who have had dementia in their family, and they'll tell you, if the brain does deteriorate, I don't understand how this person knew all these things. They seem to have a different memory, but detailed memory, and they can tell you who you are and where you've been. And my mom just would come in and do that like a zombie. It took her 2 years until she finally passed away from when she really got sick. And it was a very terrible thing to be a part of. But my point being is, something that seems to be, when people are targeting you like that, and you realize it's not because you're hanging out in the wrong crowds. Because when I say targeting, I don't mean just trying to kill me. I mean that I've had incidents where, like, just very phenomenal. The odds of these things happening are impossible. So that I don't get served at food places, at restaurants. I'm mistaken. I'm constantly mistaken for mistaken identity. Things like that, and it's not an accident, because it's like you can tell it's not me, but for some reason some information got out there that I'm like wanted for something or to interview me, and then the looks on the cops' faces when they realize we're sorry, we have no idea why we came to interview you, but we had a lead on something, and so we're sorry, and then they go away. So something is sending people to me to get me in trouble, and it has to do with what I'm about to tell you. And I don't deal with that stuff anymore because of that very issue. I'm just too old and I'm too tired. I don't have any money. And I've had a hell of a time with my mom and my dad. My dad, who seems to also be kind of like, he doesn't believe in any of this crap. And yet he's constantly having to see and put up with things that are very strange. And my very close friends, except for one, have all clearly been the victims of something that have told them not to talk to me. And they don't tell me what it is. But they make little comments here and there, and snide comments about it. And the ones that took off, I told them, can you help me out with this? Can you follow me? Watch me closely, I said. You're going to see some things that are maybe all in my head, but I want to make sure I'm not going crazy. Like Murphy's Law, like people start harassing me for no reason, and you can tell they're kind of crazy, like possessed minded, like, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying they're possessed as much as you can tell this person is not themselves, but they're not homeless or anything. This would happen so often that instead of getting any support, my friends were terrified. That's how overt it is. That's how bad my life is like that. So something knows that, and I don't think it's a person, that I know these things. So I got out of it. In July, my brother's birthday was July 18th. Molly Tibbetts in the Midwest. Now, I do want to emphasize what other people have said, is that there are a lot of missing people. Molly Tibbetts was just the one that was on the headlines. The FBI got involved, and her disappearance was very suspicious because it was in a small town in Ohio. She was going to be going to college soon. Her boyfriend happened to leave for the weekend, but he's innocent. He was like 300 miles away. And they clearly made the statement. The statement I think I heard that was most fascinating to me was that they have evidence. They have a lot of this very detailed evidence, and some of it was like they believed that she was still alive. This is like on day 3. But they were not going to release that evidence. And that the mother had made comments that she thinks she's still alive, things like that. All of them were adamant she would not leave unless she had known the person that she left with. And then they started coming out with videos of vans driving down the street, harassing women, things like that. And it said at the end of the show, and I had been kind of docile for a while, I hadn't done anything for a year, that if anyone has any information at all, or you can get any assistance to this, please call us up, whatever it may be. You don't even have to leave your name and number or anything. Just call up and give us any information. I had just gotten done watching some documentaries about this. And one of the things that I thought was so fascinating, because this happens to me all the time. I mean, you know, when I was with Wendy, she would look at me really, really weird. Wendy knows about this. Like, how did you know that? But I didn't go to the cops and anything like that, because I don't know. I just know these things. Maybe I'm just street smart. But this Molly Tibbetts case was sucking me in over and over and over again. I couldn't sleep at night. Something was just harassing me, you know. And I never could sleep really well, but something was bugging me that I had to say something. And before I even knew it, I knew something about this case. And I have my ways and means of checking these things. And even knowing it, I said, what am I going to do? Call the FBI? Next thing you know, my house is going to get raided. They're going to say, hey, look, we just found kilos of cocaine in your drawer. They weren't there earlier. So I don't have a good trust of the intelligence agencies and FBI. But I also saw something that said that it's not released to the public. It's not told on the news, which I can relate to. The news is not telling people this. And this is a show I saw like on the Home and Gardening Network. But that police heavily rely on in every department. They don't throw you away if you call up and you say, hey, I'm a psychic, or I have some kind of intuitive information on a case. They never do that. He goes, they don't tell people in the public, yeah, psychics help us. They're never going to do that. It's public relations. But if you call up and you give them your speech about, look, I'm just giving you information that's not just typical information because it's really overbearing on me. It's highlighted. I do have a history, a very big history and successful history of being correct. But I do have some clues for you. And in this case, I decided, you know what, I got to do it. So I called up, and I thought it was a recording, and I've never done that before. And they put me directly into contact with an agent of the FBI, a female. And I said, look, I just want to let you know, I live in California. I know this is going to sound kind of really kooky, but I do have some experience in what they call hyperintuitive, or kind of having a gift. And for some reason, this is my first time calling. I have some information that I just want to give to you to help if it helps with any of the evidence or anything like that. I don't want to waste your time, but could you take it down? And she did seem very eager. Yes, yes, yes. Please tell us, what do you know about her? I know we know you haven't seen her. And on the news, the mom had said some things, and the dad had said some things. The one that I seem to be wrong on, I think, but I don't know the case. I don't know the whole details. Was that the mom believed she was alive at first. Now, this was only about 6 days after she was kidnapped, and I said the mom was correct. I was very adamant about the mom was being correct. The FBI also said that they had much more details, but they didn't want to get released those because it was critical to the case. They also said she had a Fitbit on, and that they were trying to track it. And now on the news they've said, oh, well, they don't have tracking abilities, just tells you where you jogged. Okay, that's not true. We all have tracking abilities. That's one thing with my conspiracy theories. Okay, if they can tell you where you are on your computer, okay, if they can tell you where you are and tell you what kind of food to buy, and they know that you like brown sofas and put those advertisings on the internet, okay, that's surveillance. Everyone's under it. When you go to the Rite Aid store, you use your Rite Aid card. Okay, they take that and they look at the patterns of when you go shopping or when you buy whiskey or tampons. See, I never have my Rite Aid card, so I always type in a phone number, and I never type in my own phone number because I don't like them following me that way. But if you think in 2018 that the Fitbit cannot be tracked, you're wrong. You're incorrect. And why do I say that also? Well, because then girlfriends, like friends that I know, that evening, sometimes we don't know what we're saying. It's like messages. All were talking to me about Fitbit things. So I knew I was onto something there. It's just, from habit and experience. But I said, I know a name. And I go, and yes, she did know the guy. I go, she knows who this guy is. He's a friend. He's a buddy. But I go, his name is John. He's a white guy. Now, here's the thing that's crazy. And very suspicious. That's why I followed it. And sure enough, I thought I was suspicious. Now all these videos are coming up. It's amazing. Mainly by females who typically, when it comes to like murder or rape or whatever, and it was not rape, don't defend guys like that, especially if he's not here legally. And they're all coming out claiming that he's being thrown under the bus, that he's innocent. And I thought, well, whatever. What, the DNA testing come back right? It's quite vulgar. He was basically, this is months after I called, he was basically gone. They went to his job in Iowa. Or in the community of Iowa. This is important. He keeps getting dismissed for this. They embrace and invite that kind of individual to work on the farms. But he did have ID. He had an alias. His real name is Rivera. Carlos Rivera or something like that. He is not very well educated. He's a very small, scrawny guy. In fact, if you look at Molly, I think she could have kicked his ass. I'm serious. He does not, you can just tell. If you're street smart, you can tell that guy is not the guy who kidnaps and abducts people. They told him that they wanted to search the car, the car on the farm. They did. They never read him his rights. Okay, they never read him his rights. They told him that after searching the car that they had found Molly's hair in his car. Now, busted, I guess. Well, he kept saying, they have a audio tape of this, that he's not guilty, he's not guilty, I'm not guilty. I didn't do it. He doesn't speak good English in the audio. No. In fact, at one point he says a very interesting line, which could have been stolen, but it's an interesting line. He says, I don't know how to do that. I'm incapable of doing that. It's what he says in Spanish. 15 hours. Now, they're telling him he's guilty. That he goes, it could be my wife's hair, because he's married with a kid, who are showing up at the court cases because they know he's innocent. That's fascinating. And by the way, the girlfriend of this guy was Facebook friends with Molly. They keep saying that this guy and her knew each other on Facebook. No, it's his wife and kid. And the parents of the wife and kid have been showing up. And the thing that's most frightening to me, because I understand this from a spiritual standpoint, she had been out there giving speeches that, well, let's just say they're very contradictory to Trump's philosophy. Now, I'm not saying that Trump targeted her. I'm not saying that. I'm saying when you're in a world right now where if the goal could possibly be deep hatred and racism, they are going to, and we've been seeing this, so you have. The media is not now covering these stories, but they are happening now. I'm not denying that these individuals are not involved in crime. I'm going to ask you, why is that happening? What is getting to them? What is possessing them or overtaking them to go and do these crimes so that the news is filled with illegal aliens breaking the law? And that has been very much echoed by the way, the court case, they have the lawyer come out, and then the person in the newsroom at Fox has the autopsy report. blasts this guy for not reading the autopsy report, which is very violent. And the guy says, I've been in court all day. I don't even have that autopsy report yet, but it was given out to all the media. In fact, for his preliminary case, his lawyer barely made it. His lawyer's kind of a high-powered attorney who's not getting paid at all for this, but he saw what I was saying. He totally saw what I was saying. And Trump came out before he was ever had a hearing, made a huge speech about it, didn't even get the accurate facts. Trump's the devil. There's no doubt in my mind. Maybe not the original, but there's no doubt in my mind that Trump right now in 2019 is what we would represent. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. You don't. I mean, you don't lie that much. I mean, some of the things he's saying are just ridiculous. You got to keep in mind. Remember, he was the one who said a year before Molly got kidnapped, how they're all coming here and they're all kidnappers and racists and rapists. So he's setting up the scenario. So I don't know what ghastly entities do that, but they do that to support the candidate. It seems to happen with Obama, with anybody. These scenarios go down with like the "I told you so" element about like Trump. And Trump has said, I know he does. He gets some sort of advice and knows things other people don't know. That's a quote. I know things other people don't know. And I'm like, dude, he is gifted, or something is feeding him his information. That supernatural ministry you read about in the Bible, yeah, that's meaning he does what he wants, he breaks the law, but you just can't touch him. If that doesn't apply to Trump, I don't know what does. But they arrest this guy, and then they didn't even have the paperwork for the first court case, and the judge apologized, saying, yeah, I don't know what happened. Our computers all got hacked last night. Sorry we can get a hold of you. Now, this has been happening over and over again. They haven't even presented a case. They don't have any evidence. They said he led them to her to the body. Now, what's interesting is the body was in a cornfield that they had already searched. It was right nearby. They'd already searched that place. And they show the picture, and it's a perfectly cut out, like a grave. I mean, I guess he had time to do the lawn and gardening. And sure enough, in the thing, immediately he says, no. They have a problem with that. No, he did not do that. He never said he was guilty. He said it was innocent. And they listed that on the goddamn fucking police report as, well, he blacked out. And because he didn't remember it. Yeah, because he didn't do it. No, whatever. He just blacked out. We know he did it. And they said things like that to him. We know you're guilty. We know you're hiding something. What did you do? The guy's terrified. Dude, the guy's totally terrified. He doesn't even speak English. And they don't read him his rights. The FBI was in on this case. Now, what's amazing now is what the FBI is nowhere near him. On the press conferences and all that, the FBI went ghost. So they stretched these guys out there. The whole city where she was murdered is supporting her. Every news station, I don't care if you're Republican or liberal, has all made it look as if the city is upset and angry at this illegal alien thing. And yet they're the ones putting up signs essentially saying, if you're illegal, come here. We'll have you can work here. So they're totally now using this girl. And the dad came out and said, don't use my daughter's soul. I like that line. Don't use her soul for your agenda. Because in her speeches, she's so anti-racist. She's so anti-racist. And then to find out that her sister married into a Latino family. Did she know this guy? No. She may have known him as the boyfriend of the girl that she went to school with, but he was a totally different age, and he lived not close. But he did say he had a run-in with her once jogging. Now, it's funny, because in the report that they came out with, the police said, he stopped her jogging, and she said, leave me alone, on and on and on. Okay, so they took what he said, because they didn't know that before. They took what he said, and they put it into the report as it's an admission by him as part of the murder, although it happened months earlier when he started jogging. And she was at home. And they definitely are saying now that, no, he stole her from the street. He took her off the street during, like, afternoon into the sunset. Yet they're totally throwing away. Even the boyfriend came out, who was 200 miles away, and said that he got an Instagram from her, like at 11 o'clock at night. Now, they're totally dismissing that now. You're not hearing about that, and they're not letting them interview the family, who has come out and said, this is bullshit. You're using our daughter. You're doing the exact opposite, which is a key element. You're using our daughter as a sacrifice for you to get your political way. And of all the things that have come out about these murders with illegals or anything like that, there has never been another case, of all the cases in this country, not only that you've come out and you blasted this guy before he's even had his hearing, presumption of innocence, but why is it that when this one happens, where it seems to be totally bogus, and I'll give you more information, before you even know what the police file says, why is it that 500 people come out and want to use this case as the example before the court hearing? It was almost as if they were waiting for it to happen so they could use it as political fodder. And the father also blasted the John Trump. He says, you're a liar. And he goes, don't use my daughter. The father said this. For your goddamn wars. And he knows what's up. He totally knows what's up. He goes, it goes against my daughter's life. It's not about my opinion. It just, and they have speeches of her on YouTube saying exactly that. Now, trust me, when you don't think anyone's around, something's listening. They see you as a threat. And that's the whole thing. So she doesn't have a problem with illegal immigration. She's very open-minded. She's kind of a hippie. She's very religious. She mentions Christ all the time. She goes gone for 3 months. They interviewed that guy also, and he cleared the first time. The hair comes back from the DNA, and it's not her hair. So they lied to him in the interview. And they basically arrest him. He finally gets to go to sleep after hours of interrogation, which was very rough. Like, 3 guys well-trained to yell at you. And they didn't even read him his rights until at the end of it, and then they handcuffed him. And everything they put in the paper is a lie. That he did it, but he just doesn't remember, so they just blacked out. No, he didn't. He said he didn't do it and didn't remember. And so, like I said, I called and I gave information. I said, I know it's someone she knows, on and on and on. Well, they arrest this guy, and I go, well, that's definitely not the guy. So I go, I guess I didn't get it right that time, but I tried to help. Well, I find out later on that he has an alias because he wanted to get work, so he had to get an illegal ID. The illegal ID on there, his name is John Buddy. So I feel obligated now because I know that's not who I was talking about. I'm positive that's not the guy. And I didn't say John Buddy. I said that it was going to be a friend of hers or a buddy, and that I know his name is John. So I hope they didn't use that. If so, well, apparently I'm supposed to get a $100,000 reward. The whole country was in on the reward. But there's so many very weird. I mean, she was killed very violently. Look at pictures of the guy. If you're street smart, if you're from L.A. or New York or Chicago, look at a picture of the guy they have in that seat, and you tell me for a second your little sister wouldn't be able to beat him up, and he's just not the kind of guy to do it. Now, other people laugh at that because they don't have sight. They can't see what we see. That's who I'm talking to right now. It's clearly set up. And then they say they're not going to give any evidence. They won't give any evidence. The DA will. They want to put him on the death chamber. They don't have any proof at all. And they said, well, we're going to give it to him the night before the case. And then the day before the case, for his preliminary hearing, the judge apologized because the lawyers never got any of the information because the computers were hacked in his case. So it's being set up for political purpose. Whether Trump knows it or not is besides the point. The point I'm trying to make to you is that's how they roll. That's how they do it. That's how they do it. So they set that scenario up because Trump's speaking on it before she's basically dead. So he had to intuitively or somehow be in on it because you wouldn't speak like that unless you knew this is my big moment to get up on the grandstand. And it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. I've seen him do that before. But that's why I'm so adamant about this one case, because I did break my rules, and I went and I said, I'm going to call him up and give him the information I know. One thing I do learn, I mean, I've been around death my whole life. And I've been around people who, while they have died my whole life, which is really weird. That fact freaks out my friends. Sometimes they're like, I don't want you to come over, because every time you come over, someone dies because you're there. That's how the whole Archangel nickname came about. But with that said, it's just like, there are too many signs. I wouldn't have been drawn to this case. Every day a girl goes missing. In fact, there's one story I saw that they believe 13 girls were missing within the same 10-mile radius. And they all left in the last 2 weeks prior to Molly. And then they find her body. I mean, when they say people, got abducted and they drove by, and, she was jogging, and while she was jogging, someone abducted her. You've got to look very closely at what they're saying when they say that. Someone had a black van. It turns out the black van was not even his, by the way. And by the way, it doesn't have license plates. And in the last 2 weeks, everyone in the city had been calling saying that there's these 2 black cars that seem to be following around all the girls that have no plates. And it's just like the cars in the security camera that they claim was owned by the ranch he worked at, that he drove on occasion. And that's the one they said they found DNA samples and the hair of that girl in there. Yet they found nothing, which is impossible. Why? Because it's the only car he had. How can you put someone in the car, in a dead body in the car? And he said, and they popped the trunk and her dead body was in there. That's a lie. They found no DNA. They told him they did, and he was like, no, I didn't. He didn't even have to let them search his ride. But he knew he was innocent. So this is something to pay attention to. Why? Because it perfectly targets the biggest problem that we ever are going to have to be happy and get on in society. Because when you see the interviews of how they talk to this guy, and you got to keep in mind, let's just presume for the game here, that he's innocent. You know he's innocent. And then you start seeing people act like that with hate, not even looking at the facts. Just the one issue that he's here illegally, which is what? Crossing the dirt? You start realizing, no wonder he got set up. It's just out of conscious hatred is attacked him. But I'm not making any of that up. Please come and test me and ask me those questions. I get involved in shit like that all the time. It's just the way my life goes. Now, people don't believe that because you're not a rock star, you're not good looking, you don't have the best clothes, you're not, rich with race cars and stuff like that. I can help my dad out. And you do, all these things to dismiss me. But I'm like, eventually you're running out of answers. And I told you the answer. Do you remember the answer? Now they're like, oh no. I'm like, okay, great. Just watch the case. Look into it. If they can put it on Facebook or YouTube. Because now they've flooded all of YouTube with not our news. YouTube is for us. No, everything you see on there is all replays of previous mainstream news stations. You have to go down 10 pages before you start getting to your friends' channels. It's ridiculous. But watch some of what I'm about to show you, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Peace, love, and light. Don Mike.